Hello, everybody, and welcome to yet another episode of Can Keithie Take the Heat? The recipes from Jim Ross's cookbook and the WWE Superstars. This episode, we're going to be doing a little something different, and we're going to be making the Dudley Boys Dudleyville Chicken and Dumplingz. Now, this is kind of an easy recipe, so this is a real good weeknight recipe for anybody. And takes really only about an hour-ish. And that's really just because, you got to cook some chicken thighs, and you want to make sure that the thighs are cooked. So what we're going to do is kind of break this up into a couple different segments, because I got to, let the stuff cook for 10 minutes. I don't want to bore you guys. But and then we let it simmer for about 30 to 40 minutes or so in the chicken broth. And then we have the last part, which is you kind of add some dumplings to it. Now, I decided not to make my own dumplings from scratch. I'll give you the recipe so you can do that. So the little twist on this is that I actually have, and I tried to get, because I had an old crock pot recipe where you could put, quarter up the Pillsbury biscuits and kind of drop them in, plop them into the broth, and they would, puff up and they would bake in the crock pot, and then it kind of it was nice because it kind of created almost like a little crust. And then when you scooped out, you got a little bit of the biscuit along with a little bit of the chicken or the stew or whatever it was you're doing. They didn't have any at my grocery store. So I'm going to try with the crescent rolls, which are flaky and buttery as well. So when we get to that part at the very end, I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So first thing is I have my Dutch oven here, and it's been on medium heat. So it's been heating up. And we want to put in our chicken thighs. So it says get 6 chicken thighs, which I have right here. And we're just going to put these in. And you're going to want these to kind of cook and, move them around a little bit. Not too much, because you want to get a little bit of that Maillard reaction, which is the flavor that you get from cooking. And I'm going to salt and pepper these. It says to put the salt and pepper in once you add in the other ingredients in this, which is really just carrots and onions. But, you always should salt and pepper your chicken when you're putting it in, when you're cooking it anyway. So the amount of salt and the amount of pepper that they're telling us to put in, again, it's usually to taste. I'm just going to put it in because that's how I do it. But, so you're going to want to let these kind of brown up. And then we'll come back and we'll add in the carrots and the pearl onions and the additional seasoning, which is thyme. And then we'll take it from there.
We believe it means more when something's made by hand here at Cracker Barrel. And we hope you think so too. So stop on by. You're always welcome.
All right. Alrighty, gang. Nope. So the chicken's been about, as you can hear, it's been kind of just cooking in here, browning for about 10 minutes or so. I'm just kind of shifting it around a little bit in the pot, just to kind of make sure it's not totally stuck to the pan itself. Now we're going to go ahead, it's going to heat down a little bit. I'm going to add in, it says for about 12 pearl onions, but I have just, I don't mind pearl onions, so I have, and they're kind of little, so I'm going to add a little bit more in there. And then also it says for about 8 ounces of baby carrots, which I have. I'm going to mix those in. And then it does say to add, at this point it tells you to add the pepper and the salt. Like I said, I already did add it in. I will add a little bit more salt, because a little bit more salt just to help with the carrots and the onions. So just a couple pinches of salt. And then it does say for, again, it asks for 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, but always it's to your taste. So always to your taste. I sometimes go a little bit more. It's thyme. It's a good recipe. It's good herb. And then you're going to want to let this cook again. Now it says for another 10 minutes. And then at which point you're going to add in, now it says for 3 14-ounce cans of chicken broth, which that's, you know, about 42 ounces, which I got 2 containers of, it's the Kitchen Basics organic free range chicken broth. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a whole box, and then I'll do like another cup and a half, and that should give me about the 42 ounces that I need. So once this is done for another 10 minutes or so, we're going to come back, we're going to add the broth, and then really all you do at that point is you put a lid on it. You put a lid on it, and you cook it for about 30-40 minutes, at which point we're going to come back. We're going to put in our biscuits or our crescent rolls, and then we're going to cook it for another 10 minutes. And then at that point, it's done. So, yeah, we'll see you in about 10.
I'm a brino.
Now, Dick, let me get...
Jack, it's on me. Wouldn't be a lemon party without old Dick.
So now we're going to be adding in our chicken stock. First thing I want to say is I switched over to a wooden spoon. And the reason being is because you want to scrape. And actually, the cool thing is that the onions and the carrots have kind of given me enough liquid in the bottom of the pan that it allows me to scrape up all the good stuff that cooked on the bottom, which is known as the fond. Thank you to Chef John. Shout out to Chef John on YouTube for teaching me about fond years ago. So you want to use a wooden spoon to scrape that up. The fork wasn't going to do it, so I went to my wooden spoon. So now I'm going to add in my 42 ounces of chicken broth. So, and then we're going to let this simmer. I may actually add a little bit of either flour or like cornstarch, like a corn slurry, just because I do kind of want this to thicken, and I don't know how much it's going to thicken with just whatever the biscuits are that we're putting in. So, yeah, I may add a little bit of like cornstarch, like a cornstarch slurry. And all that is you just add a little bit of cornstarch and some water, and you mix it together. And then once you add it in, it kind of thickens it up a little bit. You can use flour. It depends on what you want. Cornstarch usually works better, works faster. So, all right, so that's going to sit. So we're going to cover it. We are going to let this simmer. So simmer, I'm going to do 30 minutes. Then I'm going to come back. I'm going to throw in that cornstarch slurry. And then let that sit for another 10. And then I'm going to throw in the crescent rolls. And I'll show you what I'll do with the crescent rolls when we come back. So we had this boiling, simmering for about 30-40 minutes or so. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my cornstarch slurry. And like I said, that's just to give it a little bit of a thickening it up. Just a little bit. Just enough to make it so that like the sauce is a lot more creamy, that kind of thing, you know? Now, let me just get them because I got them out of the fridge. So what I did is I opened up the can, and I kind of just ended up thinking, there's a couple things I was thinking. I was going to ball them up, kind of plop them in, like almost have them be like dough balls. And then I went, but dumplings are really supposed to be like just like little layers of Bisquick kind of thing. So what I ended up doing is I just ended up tearing them up a little bit. And really, I'm just going to take them and just kind of plop them in. And just throughout the stew itself, throughout the chicken stew, I guess. And that way, when they cook up, they will be just ready to go. Kind of tear up ones that I, varying size, no real rhyme or reason, no real recipe, just it's your choice. It's your choice, and that's for Tim. That's for Tim Capel right there. So, but yeah, you just want to kind of plop these in. And in reality, what you would do is, if you wanted to make them from scratch, you would just add some Bisquick and I believe milk and a little bit. That's where they kind of said, like, add a little bit of pepper to it, maybe a little bit of the thyme, because then it'll kind of work its way in through the biscuits themselves, the dumplings. And then really, once it's thickened up enough, you can kind of like lay it out and then either cut them or what we like to say is a rustic effect is you're doing, which is what I kind of did, which is just tearing them into different shapes. Because again, when you eat this, it's just, you're basically just taking it out of the pot, out of the Dutch oven, and then just putting it into a bowl, and then you're going to eat it. In this case, I didn't really cut up the chicken into like bite-sized chunks. So I guess what we will end up having is taking some of this and then a piece of the chicken thigh. But so those are in there. Cover this again, let it cook for another 10 minutes, and we should be good to go. So while we have the chicken and dumplings kind of cooking up and the dumplings kind of puffing up in the Dutch oven, I did definitely want to go over the actual recipe as well as the notes that are in the cookbook here. So it does say, now this is JR's bit here. Now this is living. This is a world-class meal, so good, I once ate it 3 days in a row. The dark meat chicken stays moist and tasty, and the more dumplings, the better. After trying this dish, you might even feel good enough to attempt a Dudley-like table dive. At the very least, you'll get a euphoric look on your face a la Bubba Ray. So the Dudley Boys Dudleyville Chicken and Dumplingz, the recipe itself calls for 6 chicken thighs, skins removed, 1 8-ounce package of fresh baby carrots, 12 white pearl onions peeled, 1 teaspoon of dried thyme, a 1/4 teaspoon pepper, salt to taste, 3 14-ounce cans of chicken broth, 1 cup of Bisquick, and 1/3 cup of milk. So it says rinse the chicken thighs and place them in a Dutch oven. Cook over medium heat, stirring frequently for 10 minutes or until browned. Add the carrots, onions, half a teaspoon of the thyme, the pepper and salt, and cook for another 10 minutes on medium-low heat. Add the broth, bring it to a boil, then turn the heat to low, cover and simmer for 30 to 40 minutes. To make the dumplings, mix the Bisquick and the remaining half a teaspoon of thyme in a small bowl, then stir in the milk. Drop tablespoons of the dumpling dough into the stew, cover and cook over medium heat for 10 minutes. Remove the cover and cook for another 10 minutes. Makes about 4 servings. Now, as I said, I did not do the actual dumplings from scratch. What I did is I kind of cheated and I used the Pillsbury. I did crescent rolls. Actually, the crescent rolls I feel like came out better than had I used the biscuits, the buttermilk biscuits, because like I said, in an old crock pot recipe I had where you quartered the little biscuit and it kind of made like almost like this nice little shell. But I didn't do that this time. All I did is, like I said, is I just tore the pieces and then kind of added them in, just peppered them in around, wherever I felt it needed to be. And yeah, I mean, it felt like that was a better option for me. And again, the thyme, the salt and pepper, that's really all to taste. If you like thyme, you can add more. If you don't like thyme, add less. Salt and pepper. I originally put it, as I said, I put it on the chicken thighs when I cooked the chicken thighs. But then I did add a little bit more salt when I did add in the carrots and the onions because, that's just something that I do. And then, of course, like the broth, you could either do like a low sodium, you could do chicken broth, you can do, you could do an alternative. You could do like a vegetable broth if you want. I don't know why you would, but you could. And then, I mean, this is kind of where you can, zhuzh it up as much as you want. If you want to do, as I was saying earlier, where you want to kind of scrape up the bits on the bottom of your pan, that's kind of like deglazing it. You can deglaze it with anything. I mean, this could actually be, you want to do like a little white wine or a little sherry. That might actually help as well if you want to kind of, like I said, zhuzh it up a little bit. I was fine with using just the broth, and that worked out well. So, yeah, I mean, we're going to be back. We're going to see what the finished product looks like. So, stick around. Alrighty, everybody. So this is how it looks. So that is it. So that's ready to be scooped out and served up on a little plate. So feel free to go ahead and do this yourself. Like I said, this is a pretty easy weeknight recipe. Didn't take more than 5 minutes, I think, to prep and cook everything. And then really it's just waiting for everything to cook. So please listen to everything we do here on the Backbone Wrestling Network, Backbone Movie Network, Backbone Cooking Network. And we'll see you when we see you. Thanks. Bye-bye.